So the topic of today is equanimity, and equanimity is a very beautiful quality. It's sometimes even referred to as one of the sublime qualities, and to live as a divine being, as a God. You need to develop equanimity along with loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic or empathic joy. I'm sure most of you are familiar with loving kindness. It's a type of meditation we practice at the end of our meditation when we ourselves are full with peace and stillness, we can share it with others. So that's a very nice practice that is also connected to dedicating the merits of our meditation. Then we have compassion, which is being able to um, connect with other people, connect with how they are, how they feel, and at the same time be there in the best way for them. And sometimes it's a kind, loving word. Other times it may be a bit more of a firm word, depending on the situation the person finds him or herself in. Empathic joy is the ability to feel happy when others are happy, to rejoice in the merits and the success of others, not to feel envious, but to say, well, because we are all connected, also from a quantum physics perspective, we're all connected. So if one person thrives, we all thrive. And that's how this empathic joy can be easily explained and applied without the need of feeling envy or jealousy. And the fourth one is equanimity, upekkhā. And equanimity is, in general, we could call it a state of mental stability, of being able to keep our mental composure. And sounds easier than done, because in practice there are so many situations in life that often unexpectedly we hear of a person who is dear to us, who fell ill, having an accident, and all of a sudden we are also out of our state of balance. So it's very easy to fall out of this state of stability. Of course, something similar happens as well. I'm not sure how many football fans are around here in this environment. Personally, I have stopped watching football a long time ago. But if you see at your favorite sports team, when you are passionate about it, you live along with the gains, the wins and the losses, and imagine if they become champion, right? So we completely give ourselves the permission to go crazy, to do whatever we feel like to celebrate this huge moment. So those are some very concrete examples of our day-to-day life where we are most prone to lose equanimity. But of course, there's so many other situations. I think if we take a moment to look inside, we will recognize that probably more often than we think, we actually lose that state of balance, lose the center, and we get carried away by the notion of winning something, losing something, whatever situation that activates the the afflicting emotions inside ourselves. Basically, what such a situation does, and if we get carried away, it's a sign that we are reaffirming the fact that we exist, because the afflicting emotions are one of the veils, but the first veil is the veil of the mind that nurtures our illusion of being independent individual, real existing individual. And so all the emotions reaffirm that. And so that's how the mind tends to fall into that pitfall of getting carried away by important emotions such as elation or frustration, anger. thereby, we can very rightly say that equanimity serves as an antidote to the bias of our ego, the bias of the notion of the fact that I am an independently existing being, and moreover, that I find myself in the center of the universe. It's a delusion or delirium to think, that I'm the center of the universe. But um, funnily enough, most of our uh, mental habit patterns nurture that very notion. We think that people look at us in an angry way because of us, maybe something completely unrelated to us. So here we see the three main poisons of the mind at play. And when we do not have equanimity, where we fall much more easily prey to those viruses of the mind. Often there is confusion between equanimity and indifference. And people tend to say, oh, I rather not be equanimous because then it's like I don't care. I stop caring and I want to care. And that's a big misconception. So it is not unconsciously ignoring. Yeah, it's not a not caring because you're not aware. No, you're very conscious. You're very aware of the reality as it is, and you recognize the impermanence in reality, which allows you to let go. Yeah, so instead of attaching and clinging to that temporary reality, you give yourself the opportunity to recognize the illusion of the reality you're going through and to be able to detach from it, not to cling or hold on to it. Indifference typically originates in ignorance, because you're not aware of the true nature of reality, whereas equanimity originates in wisdom and insight, because you are aware of the dynamics of reality, of the real nature of life. That is what allows you to be equanimous, so that you don't fall deeply or rise very highly in short moments, and then afterwards you don't know, you feel bad because you're no longer experiencing the high and it feels like you're in a low. So it comes from wisdom. Understanding in those basic dynamics of life allows us to really have a position which um, is not caring, but it is because of in the first place, tremendous care we have for our mind and our mental health and balance, that we choose not to attach. Mm. So in that sense, it's definitely not at odds with love. In fact, it is an act of love to be equanimous. It is because we feel that tremendous loving kindness for all human beings, including ourselves, that we prefer not to feed the viruses of the mind and instead look for develop an attitude that helps us counter these viruses. And that is a very brave act of loving kindness, of loving life, of loving each other, loving society. We all have experienced the vicissitudes of life, yeah, and the ups and downs in life. They often seem quite capricious, frivolous, like unpredictable. Um, some days we win, other days we lose, right? We may be boasting in a wonderful reputation because colleagues or partners, clients, they're praising our skills. And the next day, for whatever reason, could be due to something we said, we did, or something completely unrelated. All of a sudden, they look at us as if we were the filth of the earth, right? So those ups and downs in terms of reputation also occur more often than we sometimes would like. Right? We get praise, but then the next moment we receive blame. And it could be that we even receive praise and blame for exactly the same thing. And same happens with pleasure and pain. One moment we experience pleasure, and the other moment we may experience pain. So these are experiences, life experiences, that are not within our sphere of control. We can't decide how others look at us. We can't decide or we can't control if we will win or lose in life. These are part of exactly dynamics that are outside of our control, hence the word vicissitude. And we see that even in relationships, this is the case. People that we interact with, one day we're the best friends, and because they do something, they maybe invade our territory. Again, the illusion of us being the center of the universe, and we are independently existing human beings. So whatever others do, we take it personally, and friends are very easily changing sides to the camp of the enemies if they do or say something inappropriate, something that hurts our feelings, that invades our notion of importance of being the center of the universe. So yeah, the way we engage with people, it's exactly the same. And not to mention of this whole bunch of strangers, the majority of human beings on this planet, we are completely unknown to us. But we don't care. Yeah, sometimes we say we care, and we say that in a very generic way. But typically, for most of us, when we walk in the street, people we don't know, we just simply pass by. We don't even think of sharing, for example, peace energy with them. We just walk by and go through with our own day. So there are a few important dynamics aspects that we can consider when we want to work on this um, uh, ability to be equanimous. First of those is to be able to recognize and contemplate that whatever happens, all that surrounds us, is impermanent. We ourselves are also impermanent. Sometimes we forget that we will die as well, and we seem to behave and act as if we were immortal, as if we were going to live forever. It's also important to recognize that at the end, all these desires are inherently unsatisfactory. Nothing can satisfy fully all desires. You may long for delicious ice cream, but once you start eating, you say, "Oh, I want more, and I want more," and it turns out that the more you eat, it's no longer on the same level of satisfaction, and you may even end up with an indigestion if you eat too much ice cream. So, there's nothing that can really deeply satisfy whatever desires we have. And of course, everything around us is subject to change. We don't control all the elements in our life. So if we recognize that not only at some point objects or people in our lives will disappear, but they can also change. Remember the different examples I gave you just before on the vicissitudes of life. So everything can and will change, right? Sooner or later. So why cling onto it? That's the big key. Of course, it's also important in that sense to contemplate if we're not able to control our surroundings and those dynamics. What is it then that we do control or we can control? And we don't necessarily do it, but what is within our sphere of control? And that is being responsible for our own happiness. And of course, when people are unhappy, it's also recognizing that they, in large part, are responsible for their own unhappiness. And help and of course, no surprise there that meditation is a key practice that helps us to develop that highest level of wisdom, of insight, which is that of experiencing through meditation in ourselves the impermanence of life. that everything is unsatisfactory and subject to change. And we don't need to contemplate something specific, a specific situation, because of course, if we're going to think about something, we're going to direct our thoughts, we no longer are simply aware, right? We are directing. So that's not the point of meditation. But we can use the different meditation obstacles as the opportunities to identify that, for example, pain in my body because of the sitting posture will change over time. It's not always the same pain, and it may disappear and then come back later, but it is always changing. If I have, let's say, pain in my joints, in my knees, or in my lower back, and I stop paying attention to it, and then a while later I redirect my attention there again, I will probably notice that the degree or the type of pain or discomfort has changed, right? So it's a very easy way of observing how these meditation obstacles also offered us that opportunity to recognize the reality of life without having the need to open our eyes or to move around. Simply sitting still and turning our gaze inside gives us that opportunity. So that is the key to meditating. You know that sooner or later obstacles will appear, and no longer think of them as something negative. The meditation obstacles are an invitation to go deeper. They will only appear if you are meditating correctly, because otherwise the viruses of the mind wouldn't bother coming up with those obstacles to prevent you from going deeper, to prevent you from experiencing even deeper levels of inner peace. So the best way is, whenever you have wandering thoughts or distractions, just observe them as if they were clouds in the sky. If a cloud covers the sun, are you able to blow away the cloud to make it disappear? Well, maybe some are, but I still have to meet them. um, uh, no, we just simply wait until the wind blows away the clouds, or the clouds simply dissipate, and we can see the sun again. Now, the interesting thing in meditation is that we, yes, we don't get hung up with the clouds, but it's also to remember we have a choice. Yeah, if we visualize, for example, a bright sun or a nice full moon in the center of our body, and wandering thoughts appear, it is as if there were a cloud in between our ability to be aware of the center and the center itself. Doesn't mean that the bright sun or the full moon in the center has disappeared. No, it does not. The center is still there. So remember that you always have a choice. Where are you directing your attention towards? Do you stay with the clouds, or will you go back to the center? And that's the point here, right? Do not fight, do not resist. Celebrate your awareness, the fact that you have been able to notice your distractions. Oftentimes, especially when we're not yet used to meditation as a practice of mental cleansing, it takes a while before we notice that we got distracted. Sometimes 5 minutes, 10 minutes even. So we can observe also with regular practice how the time span between getting distracted and you noticing the distraction reduces, becomes shorter and shorter, right? So that's cause for celebration instead of preoccupation. We let go of the worries, of the preoccupations, and we celebrate the fact that we are present, we are aware. And that will help us to connect more easily with whatever image we have in the center, and to let the distractions disappear on their own account without us having to do something. And this is, of course, very counter-natural, in the sense that, well, actually, I should say countercultural. because we have been taught that the more we do, the more effort we put, the higher the return. And so in meditation, it's the other way around. The least wanting, the least expectation, the least forcing, the higher the reward, the more still and peaceful we will feel in our center. There's an last part to this slide, and don't sweep thoughts under the rug. Sometimes, especially in shorter meditations, it's possible to imagine that you sweep the thoughts under a rug. In fact, my wife sometimes she does she imagines there's a hot air balloon, and you know, the ones that they are filled. I forgot the name of the type of air that they use to fill it, but where the balloon goes up, right? So she imagines that each thought is being connected to such a balloon and then floats up in the sky, far away from her. That's another practice. Now, the key here is that this may work for short meditations, but just like with a real balloon filled with the air that makes it go up. Oh, helium. Yes, thank you, Andreas. So just like the helium makes the balloon go up at some point, the effect of it being able to carry it upwards disappears, right? And so the balloon falls down again. So your thoughts hit you again. So in longer meditations, that's something you will notice, right? That you thought you got rid of thoughts by maybe putting them in the bin or sweeping them under the rug or having them blown up in the air. But sooner or later, they will come back, right? And probably stronger than before. So the best thing is just to deal with them, and I say deal between brackets because it's not about you doing something very specific about them. It's recognizing them for what they are, recognizing the impermanence behind them, the inherently unsatisfactory nature behind it. For example, if we talk about distractions that make us desire. So each of these obstacles has its counterpart, and by engaging with it and by putting this to practice, you're able to overcome them. And even by overcoming them doesn't mean they have completely disappeared. Longpi John, I don't know if he sometimes comes here, he has shown this very, very beautifully that it's more like two racing cars, and it's not so much that we get rid of the racing car of obstacles, but we just stay ahead of it. And the way we stay ahead of it is by staying sabai, staying in our center, still and quiet. Because the moment we lose our sabai, we lose our concentration or our awareness, the distractions will take over again. So it's a continuous process. And that's also a very important lesson that meditation teaches us. Stable and steady pace, keep going, keep your balance. And the key to most meditation obstacles is equanimity. And so try to develop equanimity in your meditation. You will notice how more easily you will be able to apply it outside of meditation as well.